Hi, this is Amanda,
And this is Jen.
and you're listening to Just This, a podcast that explores everything around being and becoming a mother or parent.
We're excited to have you join us as we dive into the practical details as well as the unseen energetics on topics that span from preconception to years after birth.
All right. So today our subject is to school or not to school, something along those lines.
Yeah.
And it's summer when we're recording this. And we were just talking about schooling in general because Jen has a very interesting background with her navigation of schooling and not schooling or unschooling. And I've always been a huge fan of unschooling from the beginning, from before I even had a child. And yet my child's going into kindergarten and the end of the summer. So we thought we would just chat a little bit. We're going to keep it brief as far as give an overview about some of the options. And then we're probably going to dive into some of our experiences and our story. And we have some episodes planned that will expand on some of these different areas to hopefully deeper dive into some of those pockets that we'll probably just be giving an appetizer of today.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's a big question that parents have about should we send our kid to school or keep them home and homeschool them or unschool them?
I think it's a question we have in our world and maybe some of our circles. I think for many people, actually, it's not a question. It's just very status quo of this is what you do. You just go to school. I think that is changing, but I also have to remind myself I live in an area where it's changing.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think the other thing that has made people question it or explore their options more is COVID and
Uh,
people's experiences since then. But that is being more and more forgotten. I think immediately coming out of COVID, there was a lot of people who were like, oh, my child actually does better not in a school environment. So let's just start with you're very good at giving some good, succinct definitions of some of the options. There's multiple because when you talk about unschooling or homeschooling, then you can go into many subdivisions. But we'll just talk about the options of going to school, homeschooling, and unschooling. Is there anything
okay.
else you wanted to give as an option here?
I think within the schools, like I'm going to say public to private schools, so schools that you send your child to, there's two different, like there's public, private, and charter schools. And those are all very different too.
Yes.
Obviously,
But
this can be it's so amazing how these little topics can expand into long conversations. And just like a quick note on the schooling aspect of public school, private school, and charter schools. I think the big thing to note is that public schools have a lot more support for kids as far as learning disabilities and those like type of things. Like if your kid needs more support, the public school, it's almost as if it's included in it. But if you're in a private school, that stuff is often an extra cost to help your child. And then there's charter schools that are private and public. And the thing with charter schools is a lot of them don't require a teaching degree, like a teaching credential, but a lot of the teachers there are required to have at least a master's. So there's like something to kind of think about too.
and I
Oh,
don't know with the private school, there's so many layers and nuances. I do think there is a lot of support actually that are provided in private schools that's just wrapped into the cost of what you're paying. And
mhm.
so maybe there's many layers to that, but basically schooling is the first option. And I think the point here is there's a lot of options within just sending your kid to school.
Yeah.
So obviously part of this discussion is figuring out a fit for your family and for your kid.
Mhm.
And if you are in the boat of needing to send your kid to school, because there are many of us who are in that boat,
Mhm.
then the quick takeaway is there's still a lot of variety in
Mhm.
what you can find to find something that could work within that need for your family.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
really do think the public schools, at least here where we're at, they really do try to include emotional things. They have the quiet corner. So there's things that help with the emotional component too. It's very different than when we went to school. And then so just to quickly just state homeschooling versus unschooling. Homeschooling, you typically have some form of curriculum, and unschooling is a little bit more child-led in the sense that things that interest them, you would help encourage them to learn more about whatever their topic is. And with unschooling, it's more of a holistic approach. So, for instance, say someone's really into music. You can learn a lot about music. You can learn geography through music by learning different music from all over the world. Or you can start to incorporate math into music and how there's beats and all that type of stuff. So, as opposed to like other school systems, more traditional settings, is that they have a curriculum and they teach geography and then they teach math. And sure, things might overlap, but it's a little bit different where you're taking the interest of a child and then incorporating all of the like smaller things, you know,
Yeah.
subjects, not
Yeah.
more than subjects in there. So,
And there's so many things you can get into different types of unschooling. There's world schoolers, there's things that are more nature focused. So yeah, there's many different subsets here. And I still consider unschooling a form of homeschooling personally, but and depending on what you're used to, there is this big question, and it's becoming more normalized to use unschooling as a form of education and seeing that kids turn out just fine with that approach.
yeah.
And to me, it's becoming more popularized, but there are some people from past generations where they think it's just crazy.
Yeah.
And I still encounter that sometimes, but I do believe actually it's the way of our future in some ways. I don't think people realize with where our technology is going, how the opportunities in unschooling, it's just very easy to connect to the resources and to the education in a way that we couldn't in the past. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you were a big fan of unschooling. I was too. So what made you guys decide to do
well,
schooling?
let's start with you. Let's start
Okay.
with you because your child came first. Jen started with unschooling, and I think we both probably knew about it before giving birth. Sounds like
Yeah.
we both had. And the more I deep dived into unschooling, and I'm like, there's just so many statistics out there that show simple things like you retain information better when you're enjoying what you're doing, or you learn something faster when you're doing it as play versus just straight up study. We all know this. When we're cramming for a test, we ace the test and then we never remember that material for the rest of our life.
Yeah.
So there was just a plethora of data. And when I was deep diving, it seems so logical to me. It's a funny way. It's
Hmm.
like actually logical that this is the way that really seems the most natural for learning and actually supporting a person and their own unique makeup. And just before we get into your story, something I found that was interesting, and this might spark something in your story. I worked with a family that was 100% unschoolers, and there was four of them, just with babysitting when I was in college. And interestingly enough, it did well for them until some of them came into preteen, teenagers, and they wanted to go to school. They
Hmm.
legitimately really wanted to go to school.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting thing because one of the parents was very like, no school. School is brainwashing. Why would you want to go to school? But these kids wanted it. And therein lied well, are you supporting them? This is the whole point of unschooling. If that's what the
Hmm.
kid's desire is and that's where their interest is, then really, if you're truly unschooling,
Yeah.
letting them do that is part of the
Hmm.
unschooling experience.
I've
Anyways,
heard parents do that and they let their kids go to school and they do so well because they want to be there.
yeah. And I think this leads into we're going to dive into some of our experiences and what worked for our families and the choices we've made. But every family's different. Every child's different. There's families where some kids go to school and some kids don't, because what's going to work for one child and one family is not going to work for every child. That's the whole point, is there's a variety, and that's what makes our world beautiful and that's what makes our children beautiful.
Mhm.
And the whole point of all of this is to really find something that's supporting all of us and being the best we can be in this world. And for some of us, that might be one thing, and for others, it might be something else. And as much as data supports whatever, we're all unique individuals. You can't give one diet to one person and say, hey, this combination of minerals and vitamins and food is going to be the best for every single person.
Just to continue with what you were saying there, that yeah, I think also acknowledging the age too, because sure, maybe in the beginning they need to go to school, or maybe later on they want to go to school. So I think it's also not just the child, but the time and the space and everything that's happening in that
Yeah.
life too.
Everything's evolving all the time. Our family dynamics are changing, our children are changing. And that's another thing. You need different things at the different points in your life. Your child's going to need different things at different points in their life. And also, our technology is rapidly changing.
Mhm.
And that's something to take into consideration. And our socioeconomic dynamics are changing rapidly. So,
Yeah.
anyways,
And that's what they said too when I researched school, is that our school system really hasn't changed, and it's a slow process, of course, but we're getting there. And the school system really hasn't restructured to update to this more modern life in a way that could really benefit,
yeah.
us. And
Let's
with
talk about your
that said,
experience. Let's talk
yes, with
about,
that said, my son is in school. He is in a dual language program, and he started in a immersion program. So the difference with immersion and dual is that dual, you do 50-50, and immersion, when you start in at 90%, and then the next year it goes down to 80, and the following year 70. So it slowly decreases. But with the immersion, you're fully immersed in the language, whereas the dual, like my son does math, science, and something else in Spanish, and then everything else is in English. And then with immersion, it would be 90% of what you're doing. And so my journey is I definitely wanted to homeschool and unschool. And basically, due to a separation, I needed
well,
care.
you started that way. You started with
Yeah,
unschooling until the age of 6, I believe.
about probably like 5, probably about 5 or 6. He's also, so as far as schooling goes, his birthday's in July towards the end of it. And that's also a big thing I've been noticing in the school system, is that all the kids are older than him. And so like the maturity level and things like that. And this is not for every kid, but definitely something to take into consideration. But yeah, I started with homeschooling, unschooling, because like you, I just thought it made complete sense. I know when I'm interested in something, I can go and recite paragraphs of websites and everything that I've learned, as opposed to when I'm forced to learn something, it's harder to retain, right? It's not impossible, just harder. And then, so of course, like with the, separation, the divorce, that's when things changed a little bit. I think the other thing too that I was acknowledging during that homeschooling, unschooling time was my son's an only child, and finding other kids for him to interact with was becoming, I want to say challenging, but like finding a good supportive community where he could get access to other kids. And I'm not saying necessarily in his age group, but just interaction with other kids and not adults, I found really important. And I find families that have more than one kid, it just fits a little bit better because they have that interaction and that dynamic, right? For small things like sharing, my kid never has to share ever. With an only child specifically, and specifically with homeschooling and unschooling, finding a community where they can learn those social skills, because that's really what it's about, social skills, right?
I
And we
think
have,
another thing to make sure you point in here is you were working, you had a
yes.
business and you were working.
Mhm.
And I thought it was really creative because I think that's the number one question that definitely was mine is how do I continue to work? I am a working parent. There are times, don't get me wrong, where I'm dreaming about, oh, it'd be so great to just play with my child all day. When they get older, it gets easier to think that. But then I realistically know in my heart, no, I enjoy the work I do. You enjoy the
Mhm.
work you do.
Yes.
And the biggest thing is, well, when they're at a younger age, how do you manage working and unschooling?
Hmm.
And it's a legitimate question. I think that's
Yeah.
one that basically, as a single parent, that
Hmm.
was where you didn't have a choice,
Yeah,
right? Unless you
exactly.
wanted to pay someone to
Exactly.
support you. And this is where having community too comes in, is it's helpful to have community because you can. I also have this idealistic thing of setting up a pod where it's like, oh, we find
Hmm.
4 families that are wanting to unschool, and then each parent take the kid 1 day a week.
Right.
I love this. And do you know how impossible that is to fucking figure
It's
out? I mean,
so, I know.
and I don't know, it's you're in Reno, I'm in San Francisco, but You would think maybe because of the amount of people here that would be easy to do, and it's not. It's just very complicated. I
Yeah.
kind of wonder in smaller communities or smaller towns if it's easier because the community is so close knit, and so all the people doing this are a little bit more close. Also,
Yeah, I
just
think
geographically, you're in a
yeah.
smaller town, you're closer, there's no traffic. But yeah, I just wanted to point out the fact you got really creative. You were taking your kid to after school programs
Yep.
and using that time to work. And I was like, that is genius. And actually sparked something in me where I started doing that a little bit too.
A lot of the after school programs, they don't have to be attached to the
Yeah, they
school.
don't. You
Yeah,
just make your,
just
and
spot
it's
them.
very play, craft,
Yep,
focused. Like
it's
the
great.
other nice thing I think too is they have tutoring. So your kids
Mhm,
are exposed to a person that can help them. Like my daughter got very into writing.
mhm.
Well, now you have somebody she can ask and sit down. How do you write this? Somebody's there to help her learn how to spell things or whatever it is. And so that tutoring is there actually to foster what they're wanting to learn versus helping them with a homework assignment.
Right, right. I love that. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. And also my work environment, especially when I was doing acupuncture, I could bring him down a little bit.
Mhm.
Because I also believe that we keep kids away from a lot of things, and there's certain work situations where I do believe kids shouldn't be, especially when they're younger. But a lot of situations, like what's wrong with a kid at a restaurant? You know what I mean? It's not, they're not going to do anything. And when I was doing acupuncture, a lot of times I wouldn't usually have him come down on first initials, but as I got to know the client and stuff, I'd have him come down and have him help me. And there's learning that happens whether or not he actually believes it or not. So,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
100%.
And the one thing that really helped me accept the fact that he was going to school was having him learn another language. That was so important to me because I feel we're like one of the first world countries that don't teach language at such a young age. And it's just, I get it. We speak English, so we can go to a lot of countries and there's people that speak English, but why not learn another language if we have that opportunity to, you know? And so that really helped me to be like, okay, yeah, let's do this the school system thing since I can't do the homeschooling or unschooling that I want just because of my situation. And we'll see what happens in the future. I think right now, I mean, this is the other thing. I look at school, like public school and schools that they go to, it's essentially free babysitting, right? Like
Yeah,
that's the
exactly.
way I
That's what I was
look
saying.
at
It's a
it.
childcare thing.
It's a childcare thing. And so the other thing I read somewhere about this type of schooling is that we can't depend on the teachers and the school system to provide all the knowledge that we want for a child. And so having that awareness, I'm going to have to add in the support of things that I want him to understand, like finances. I'm probably going to have to teach him about finances. Cooking, I'm going to have to teach him about cooking. They don't really do those things in school, which I really appreciate about homeschooling because that was a part of it is that you're learning really how to live, right? Like, and that includes cleaning and cooking and doing all those things.
Yeah.
So just coming from that space of, hey, I have to add in the additional support, but I get this free childcare and
I wish there was a hybrid solution too. That was the other thing. And I mean, we can go down the rabbit hole of what I've found out, but a lot of schools will say you have to come. We have these attendance things, and then I've learned that you actually can just do whatever the fuck you want because
yeah,
school in America is a right, not a privilege.
it's
Yeah,
good to
my
know.
we very similarly have decided the only reason we're putting Penelope into school is the immersion. The childcare aspect came in as well.
Mhm,
My kind of thoughts are to not feel pressured to take her 5 days a week.
mhm, yeah,
I'm very much in the mindset that if she misses a day every week, it's not a huge deal
mhm,
and actually may be beneficial. And again, that's going to be very dependent on how things are going with our family and for her.
mhm,
And then the second aspect of it is I very much believe that by the time elementary is over, she will phase into unschooling slash
yeah,
homeschooling kind of thing.
yeah,
But again, that's going to be dependent on what is working for her and where we are as a family.
yeah.
So we'll see. Yeah, once they get to that age of like 7 and 8, that more independent study. Even now, she does great with independent play, but it's hard for some full days or even just multiple hours during the day.
And I have the same approach. There's days where I'm just like, I think you need a mental health day. Like we all need them sometimes. Let's just chill out at home and take it easy. And I still work and there's definitely more screens that happen but sometimes they need that. And there's days that he had a rough morning and then I have him go for a few hours. I've even called into the school, been like, hey, is he okay? Or reached out to the teachers, just said he had a really rough morning. If it starts to get too much, just call me. I'll come pick him up. And a lot of times he's usually fine. And then even sometimes I get more stressed out and worried. And so I think that's a good approach too, because they don't technically have to be in school, but it's good to call and be like, hey, they're going to be out and get the homework and stuff like that or whatever
Yeah.
they need. Yeah. So
How
it's
do you
a
approach homework? How do you, I'm curious with that part. Are you, yeah.
I've learned a lot about that too. Also learned how hard it is sometimes to teach your kids and the patience. And also what came up for me helping my son with homework was of how I was actually sat down with my family and did homework. That just came out with working with him. So I give teachers a lot more credit. And it's a learning thing with homework, but I pretty much I try to pace it out. This year he's had less homework, which has been nice because I also believe that kids are in school for so long already, especially at this age, right? They're so young.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna make him sit at home for an hour every day after he's been in school for so long because he's the type of kid that needs the expression out. He needs to move, and it's not benefiting him to force him to do
Hmm.
things. And one thing that I started doing in towards the end, because it became too much, was that he can't have screens during the week unless his homework's done. And
Hmm.
that really helped out a lot because he'll watch it in the morning as he eats and stuff, but it would be like he'd come home and then he wouldn't want to do the homework. So he doesn't have to do it, but he has to, if that's the choice, has to do Legos or something else. And then that took the pressure off of me. And then I put it more on him too. And then when he didn't want to do it, I said, okay, then you just tell your teacher because there's something there that says, hey, I have to go to my teacher and be like, I didn't do it. And the other one I realized with the homework was my personal capacity to help him on certain days. So there would be certain days where I'd come home and be like, if we're not doing homework now, I'm not helping you for the rest of the evening. And that's just because we get home around 3:30. And then he wants to start homework at like 5 or 6. I'm just some days I just don't have the capacity to be patient with him. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because with homework, I feel like we come from these past generations of perfection. And
Hmm.
that's one thing I think I want to be able to utilize, like how can you utilize homework to actually teach that it doesn't have to be perfect. This is an exercise just to try, right? It's just like an exercise and almost not helping our kids be perfect and just letting them do what they do. And that's the part where it's hard and it's out of our control with school of what they're getting on the other end. And it almost makes your job as a parent even more, there is an aspect of you have to really communicate with your kids and help your kids understand this is the world we live in and some people are going to be this way, but this is my perspective, here are my values, and trying to help them see that it's okay if maybe where they're coming from isn't meeting the expectations of other people, or maybe their values are a little bit different. So
Yeah. I
yeah.
tell him we have a mantra essentially. If you get it wrong, it's just an opportunity to learn. And so when we get all his work back, we just go over it and we specifically go over the questions he got wrong. And it's not like bad job. It's just like, hey, it looks like you didn't really understand this. Let's review it. And then at the end of it, I say, great job. You got it.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's about, right? It's just about learning. Clearly, you didn't understand what happened here. So let's just review it and go over it in a casual, more calm setting and see how it takes place. And just reminding him there's going to be some kids that are really good at things and some kids that are really bad, and you're going to get things really easily. And then other things are going to be hard to understand. So just reminding them of those values
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we have an idea for a guest to bring on for diving more into the unschooling aspect, but we thought it would be fun to talk about our thoughts and our experiences and yeah, where we've gone on this journey. And it's such an interesting thing to be so in the mindset of supporting one thing, but yet being like, okay, we're stepping into this other thing. And then there is an aspect too, kids do naturally learn something. But sometimes as a parent, you're like, I just do not want to be the teacher for my child
Yes. Yeah.
today. Just please somebody else take this
Yeah.
on. And there is a little bit of a sigh of relief of hopefully whoever the teacher is, you feel like it's just part of your extended team. So we'll see.
Mhm.
It's all an
Yeah.
experiment.
That'll be interesting. I actually
Yeah.
have a friend that she pulled her kid out of school, out of my son's class, homeschooling him because he just needed that extra care. But she's like, I really don't like homeschooling my kids.
And this is where like my pod idea is so
Yeah,
brilliant. I
I
don't know
know.
why people don't just do this. And it's so difficult. If anybody out there knows any way to connect and make these pods happen, I think also we just have such dynamic lives as adults. It's really hard for, and a lot of adults don't want to have 4 children around where I'm like,
Yeah,
whatever, 8 kids, 10 kids. It's
right.
all,
I actually always like that too, because I was like, everyone could bring their specialty and teach them whatever it is that they're
yeah.
passionate about. And I found that one of the hard things with those pods is people have very different parenting approaches, and that also conflicts
Mhm.
sometimes with things. I feel like I'm a little bit maybe more laid back about certain things, but it's interesting. But that was always my dream too. Pod and have everyone rotate around like a day and then just
Yeah.
whatever they want or take them out to the beach or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. If you
Yeah.
have some brilliant idea of how to create this, one of
We
you
just need to have you
listeners.
move out here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just kind of I know there's been people who've attempted to make websites or apps or whatever that would connect people, but it just hasn't
Hasn't
worked.
happened. And it's
Hasn't hit us.
probably we need dedication. You probably need money so people are more inclined to participate and
It
do
worked
things
during
like
COVID.
it
People
did.
figured it out during COVID.
Right? And co-ops, I guess there's like co-op schools for like preschool and stuff. So it'd be like that type thing.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
another option with schooling is co-op schools.
Co-op.
That is something that's on there. So
Yeah.
anyway, it is good to know the options that are out there because I do think when people know that they are going to have to put their child in school for the
Hmm.
childcare reason,
Yeah.
people know private school, public school, but they usually don't know the very broad spectrum of so many different varieties that there are within
Hmm.
schooling options.
Yeah. It's good.
Cool. All right. Well, let us know what you do, your thoughts. We always love to hear from listeners. It helps, I don't know, feel like you're part of this conversation too. And
Yes.
I just always love hearing people's stories because the more you hear other people's stories, the more you realize the real true variety of options there are out there. And that's like from your story when you were like, yeah, I put them in after school. I was like, wow, that is genius. There's always something out there that's new to learn. There's always something out there that's new to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can't wait to
Awesome.
hear your stories. Hey there, amazing listeners. We just want to say a huge thank you for tuning into our convo on the Just This podcast today. We appreciate each and every one of our listeners, and your continued support means the world to us.
If you enjoyed this episode and found value in it, we would be incredibly grateful if you could take a moment to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform or share this episode with someone you think would enjoy it too. Your reviews and shares not only motivate us, but they also help others discover our show.
We're also all about keeping the conversation going and hanging out with our incredible community. Head over to justthis.site, that's JUSTTHIS.SITE, where you'll find additional resources, ways to connect with us, and join the conversation, plus some more goodies.
Thank you again for being a part of the Just This community. We'll be back soon. Until next time, remember to take care of yourself and embrace the wonder as you navigate this extraordinary adventure.